Match found.
Excellente.
You have good taste, my friend.
Bruno, excellente. What's up? Bruno, excellente. Bruno, excellente. Long wait time.
Hi everyone.
Anyone I
Today
catch
I will
slacking
show
off
you how
has
to
to
fix
join my
Valorant
morning
stuck
run
on loading
tomorrow.
screen
Wake
problem.
up's at 4. Sound
Before
good?
moving on onto the video.
Reloading. Feeling careful here. Reloading. Reloading.
Out of charges.
Got one. Precision kill.
I'm too far. I'm too far.
I'm
I'm
working
too
here.
far.
Reloading.
I'm too far. I'm too far.
Hawk out. Healing over here. Healing you. Pathetic.
Enemy spotted B.
I'm too far.
One enemy remaining.
Out. Reloading.
I'm too far.
Healing over here. Hawk out. Blinded. That's the last of them.
I'm too far.
Let's do it again.
Out of charges.
Gun here. Gun here.
Here. Satchel out. Satchel out.
Cutting their vision.
Somebody out.
Cutting
Their vision. Enemy defender spawn.
Spy planted. Enemy spotted A. Get out of here. Healing grenade.
Last player standing.
Stand tall. We are Valorant. We are fighters. Here.
Tip the balance in our favor.
Still inside.
Reloading. Hunt. Reloading.
One dead. Enemy
Hawk out.
spotted. Blinded.
Our spike's down.
Spike down B.
Enough.
Reloading.
Here.
Last player standing.
I have the spike. Die.
30 seconds left.
Still in sight. Spike planted.
Oh man.
Another fight? Clean slate. Let's leave whatever happened in the past. Kill my copy. Here.
On my mark.
Headshot.
My ult's ready.
You are divided!
Somebody out. Loosen up.
Plant the spike.
Here comes the party.
One enemy remaining. Flawless.
You beauts. That's what I like to see.
One bullet per enemy. That should be enough, yes?
No prisoners. Cutting their vision.
Go get 'em. Seek them. Found them. Satchel out. Satchel out. Enemy spotted B.
Who's
Enemy
next?
spotted B.
Hawk out. Blinded. Here.
Complant.
Careful here.
That works.
Spike planted.
Enemy spotted B. Here. Careful here. Hawk out. Blinded.
One enemy remaining.
You were a boulder. For you.
If you're not doing well, keep trying. We must keep up appearances. Focus now. Eyes off me.
Reloading. Still inside.
Satchel out.
Just got gagged down.
Heal up, squad.
For you.
You are powerless.
Hawk out.
Check for tunnels.
Rotating. Rotating.
I'm too far. I'm too far. I'm too far.
Last player standing. 30 seconds left.
Finished.
10 seconds left.
Nice try.
Once more into battle. I'm not tired. Are you?
What do you need?
Out of charges. Out of charges.
Cutting their vision.
One dead.
Reloading.
Rest.
Plant the
Plant the
spike.
spike.
Spike carrier's down.
Spike down B.
There.
Cutting their vision.
Who's next?
Grenade! I have the spike. Spike planted.
There. There.
Enemy spotted B.
Last player standing.
If you see one of my creatures, it's
My
a good
ult's not
thing,
ready.
right? We'll figure out what they do eventually. Satchel out. Satchel out. Seek them down one.
Enemy spotted A.
There's another. Plant the spike. Plant the spike.
There.
Spike planted.
Enemy spotted.
Enemy spotted.
Enemy spotted C.
Oh yeah! Monster on the loose!
I didn't want to have to go there.
Last player standing.
Reloading. Together, we will bury them under their transgressions.
Here. Time to hunt.
Enemy
They
spotted.
can come.
Spike down.
Spike down B. Last player standing. Flawless.
Anyone have any splints? I may have jammed my fingers. Multiple fingers.
I get
Defenders
what I
win.
want.
Match found.
Just take a seat. I got this.
Hi everyone, it's me, Tim. Today I want to talk about the Arcanum attribute system, and specifically the original attributes, the way they were designed, not the ones we shipped with. And I'm answering a question someone asked, I'm sorry about this, like over a month ago, maybe almost 6 weeks ago. Somebody asked how I came up with the beauty stat for Arcanum, which made me look at the design doc, which made me look at the original design doc, which made me go, whoa, I was planning to do something entirely different. So let me talk about that. So a brief refresher, if you remember the attributes for Arcanum, there were 8 of them. They were physical and mental, and then there were these 4 categories called power, resistance, prowess, I'd never liked, and appearance. So the physical ones were strength, con, dex, and beauty. And the mental ones were intelligence, willpower, perception, and charisma. That is not what the original plan was. The original plan had an entire 3rd column called spiritual. Which, when I get into why I didn't use this,
try waiting.
Remember that. So we had physical, mental, spiritual. And then the 4 areas were called power, speed, resistance, and appearance. The idea was, how strong were you in that area? How fast? How did you resist taking damage to that area? And then how did that area appear to other people? This meant we had 12 attributes. The 4 physical ones were strength, dexterity, constitution, and beauty. So, not a big change there. The mental ones were intelligence, cleverness, willpower, and charisma. So the new one there is the cleverness was how fast you could think on your feet. I originally called it witty, but witty and willpower. I was trying to come up with an acronym, I never did. And then under spiritual, so for power, speed, resistance, appearance, under spiritual we did passion, zeal, faith, and temperament. So bonus points for you playing along if you notice that I snuck some of those into the outer world. You're right.
Spike planted.
So 12 attributes in 3 categories seemed initially like, this is a great idea. I can attach these to a bunch of different things. They have different meaning, and they make sense because of how strong I am physically, mentally, spiritually, how fast I am, how resistant I am,
Enemy down.
trying to hurt me.
Last player standing.
Me in that area.
1 enemy remaining.
Fall down.
But we ran into problems. First of all, that's just
Guardian's
way too many attributes. When I tried to figure out what all the derived statistics would
Hey.
be, there were just so many.
Today,
And
I was
they
the
were
sword.
unbalanced. Like strength and dex ended up having a lot more derived
Sage,
attributes
and miracles.
zeal. But also it was difficult to connect them because we had 16 skills, the 16 that we shipped with. There were combat, social, thieving, and tech. So I was trying to figure out how to connect these 12 attributes to 16 skills, and there wasn't a good way to do it that ended up with them being nicely distributed. That was a problem. That was second problem.
Careful now.
The 3rd problem was how to use them in perks, because sometimes you did want an attribute.
No charges left.
By the way, I've changed my mind on that. Now I don't like perks that are gated by things that you can't change within the game. Since
Enemy
attributes have been
removed.
fixed, I didn't necessarily want to gate perks. But of course, we hadn't even decided whether attributes would be fixed. But there were that's a lot of attributes to choose from, and also sometimes you have something and you're like, well, is it my intelligence or my willpower that should gate this? Is it my passion or my zeal?
Spike
So it was
down
hard to come
A.
up with things that made sense and that it was agreed on. And then the other problem was
1 enemy remaining.
if it's just here's a bunch of points, you have to collect points because you have 12 attributes. That's a lot of points to be spread around. But
Their
what we noticed
MVP
was
is
people would just
mine.
pick a few that
Let's
they
do
loved
this.
and pump them up really high and then dump the other ones, especially ones that didn't factor into anything they cared about on their character. By the way, the more attributes you put in a game, the more attributes there are for people not to care about. So, like, if you literally never were going to talk to anybody, you could probably dump a lot of the intelligence
Blaze,
and
quick
spiritual.
flame wall.
By the way, this is why later on I started experimenting with the idea of geometric shapes for attributes. Because the problem with, here's a bunch of attributes and here are points you can spend in any of them, leads to the problem of, if you want to give someone enough points that they can feel like they're having enough variety in character builds, you always end up with the problem of people will just buy up a few things really high
Spike
and lower
planted.
other things. Even in things that don't make sense. Like, how can someone be so strong and have no endurance? Or how can someone be brilliantly intelligent but absolutely no cleverness whatsoever? I mean, yeah, you can think of things that cover this, but there were all these combinations. Can you imagine the characters? So it always struck me that somewhere there was a way to introduce
Going up.
some kind of constraint without it being too
All good.
constraining or too hard to remember. And a lot, by the way, a lot of points in games.
One enemy remaining.
You can't lower anything at a certain amount, or you can't have more than one reduced at a certain amount, or you can't have more than one raised to the highest amount, or there's just a whole bunch of different ways people have, and it's usually here's a bunch of points, and then here's a bunch of random rules to assign, and that's why I thought shapes would help with that. Tried it on Outer Worlds, didn't make it past the testing phase. I still think there's a good idea in it. I'm just not smart enough to figure out what that idea is. Maybe one of you will figure it out. So those were the problems I had just from there being so many attributes. Ran into some other problems with all those attributes too. First of all, faith and spirit sounded religious, even though I didn't intend them to be religious. They were the non-mental parts of your inner being, like how emotional were you, or how deep. Temperament's a perfect example. Temperament has nothing to do with
What the hell? I don't
So I
remember
wanted to get those things across. Passion and zeal just kept being confused and conflated in Esther's mind. They're like, I don't understand what the difference is. And also, you notice I didn't have perception, and I wanted perception or something like it. But if we added perception, if we added launching
You want to play? Let's play.
Sight and sound. Sight is used.
Last
range
player
attack,
standing.
also seeing if someone's hiding. You can also hear maybe that you set off a trap, or you hear something out there and it warns you that
Drink
it's
some
there.
water, reload your
But those
mags,
are
and
both
let's get
physical.
back out there.
And then for mental, I'm like, what is your mental version of perception? And I thought it was like something like observation. Like, yeah, you may see something, but did you know the importance of what it was you saw? Like, you know, you saw that one of those books was a different color, but did it occur to you, I wonder if that book is a switch to open the bookcase? That kind of stuff. But there's only one of those.
They've got nerve.
And then for spiritual, I had no idea what something was going to be. And I didn't want to introduce psychic perception. It was just, how did my inner mental
Careful
being
now.
perceive the world?
Watch your
I didn't
eyes.
know what to even call that, much less what to make it. So I ended up running
Joke's
it back
over. You're dead.
and-
Enemy spotted C.
And I went with the strength context to physical. For
Spike planted.
cerebral, I wanted an int, willpower, and charisma, but I knew I had to work perception in there, so I just made perception.
Flash!
And said, this is your progress, this is how good
Enemy
you
kill.
are. This
My ult's ready.
it lost its being speed.
One enemy remaining.
About how good
My
you were
ultimate's
for-
ready.
So for physical, it was how literally how fast you were. How dexterous you were. And then for intelligence, it was how good you are at knowing. I never really liked that, but we went with it. Now, if you remember, I originally said in the first video that the cost was
that
going to go up,
important?
that higher values were supposed to cost more than lower ones.
Do they
The
still
reason
want
I
it?
did this was
Bad guys.
that way it would cost the same amount of points to be good at a number of attributes as it would be to be great at one attribute and average in the or to be great at several attributes.
Reloading.
And not so great, kind of bad at the others. I like that development of just, instead of putting rules out there about, you know, if you can't drop more than one below this or more than one above, it just was like, here's your points. Higher things cost more than lower things, and that worked really well. Especially worked well because I wanted to give auto perks, and we shipped with it. That you gained a perk automatically if you had an attribute at 20 in Arcanum. So I loved that.
Flash!
But people could really abuse it by
Careful now.
pushing a lot of attributes, especially ones they didn't care about, and they didn't get anything bad.
Right between the eyes.
So we ended up shipping with the attributes we have now, which were fine. I mean, they did their work.
Opponent's killed.
But the interesting thing about this, and you have to realize this if you go into game design, no one's ever happy. If you do the same kind of attributes a lot, people are like, I've seen this, this is boring, why are you mired in the past? If you do new stuff, like, why did you fix it? It wasn't broken. This is, you're doing newness just to be new.
Let's go!
You know, those kind of things. So, sometimes
Spike planted. One enemy remaining.
to come up with something new, so it feels fresh, but not so new that you incur the wrath of people who are like, I liked how the old one worked. Ugh. So we ended up shipping with the attributes that you know and love from Arcanum, but I've always thought about this attribute system for a number of reasons.
Good
It's
try,
different, but also
idiots.
constructed with a foundational approach. It was not, hey,
I got your backs.
I think
Just,
I went luck.
you know,
Let's
from the
throw
front.
it in. It was, here are the categories and
Need a drop.
nature of an attribute, and then we filled in that matrix with what I thought would be appropriate. We ended up doing it that way for Arcanum, but always in the back of my head, I've always wondered what those other ones could have done and what kind of game I could have
Let's
made.
fly.
But there's always new games to be made. So I hope that gives you a little insight into where
Fully
Arcanum
smoked.
attributes are eventually. Everyone,
party's
me,
over.
Tim. So I've been telling a lot of stories that I consider as kind of a summary video so far. I wanted to talk about lessons.
Careful now.
Specifically, for this video, I want to talk about the lessons I've learned by failing.
Spike down B. One enemy remaining.
I've learned more from failure
My ult's ready.
than success.
Your
Very
duty is not over. Aw, try harder.
Fallout
You
was
could
very
do that too.
successful in many ways, but I did not realize
This is fun.
parts
needs
of
training
its
dummies when you
success
have
that I
real
just stumbled
dummies?
into or got lucky with, as opposed to things that I was actually good at. So I left Fallout thinking, for example, I wrote the intro cinematic, the narration by Ron Perlman, the War Never Changes intro. It turned out people really liked that. It turned out to be really popular. It turned out to be enduring. So, you know, a couple years later, maybe more like 3 years later, when I started making Temple of Elemental Evil, I thought, you know what?
Reloading.
I'm gonna write dialogue. No.
Enemy on my mark.
I am not a good writer. Or, to be specific, there are some things I write well, and some things I write poorly. Short,
Careful now.
specific, directed text, like
Enemy spotted.
intro to a cinematic.
That's done.
Portions of
No charges
things with
left.
the Arcanum
Watch your
manual,
eyes.
some of the Fallout lore that you found, like the
Going up.
FEV,
One enemy
being
remaining.
being a Byron, that kind of stuff I write well.
Team
Dialogue,
Ace.
conversation, character,
Nice,
I do
nice,
not
nice
write
work.
well. But I did not know that
Pick something nice to
until
kill
I
them with.
finished Temple.
It's the least we can do.
And it got panned for its characters, and I'm like, wait a minute, I thought I was a good writer. Am I not a good writer? It took me years to figure out that distinction between I'm not a good writer, but there are some things that I write well.
I don't know how to do
Learning
that.
that
Money.
nuance took years, and took me way beyond
Together.
the success of Fallout or even Arcanum, and it took the failure of Temple before I even started realizing that there was a nuance there. Another thing that failure taught me is that a team-wide acceptance of the vision
Joke's
of the
over!
game you're
You're
making
dead!
is not easy to get and is not easy to maintain.
Enemy spotted B.
Again, with Fallout, even though it was the biggest team I'd worked on so far, we all just sort of gelled. It was... everybody who worked on it kind of understood the direction it was going. Before then, I had made games with very small teams, so either
Spike
getting
planting.
that vision was easy because when there's only 2 people and you split the work, your vision kind of dominates.
One
whatever
enemy
portion.
remaining.
It wasn't until where I thought we were all making the same game, and there was some fracturing that happened. I'll do a video about that later. There were some really huge breakdowns that happened during the
Was that
making of the game.
important?
With
Reloading.
the same people I made Fallout with. So it took me a while. It took me years to figure out, piece apart, what was the difference? What happened? And the bottom line was,
what's the plan?
you may have an idea of what the game is, but it may not align with what everybody making the game's idea is. And getting that vision communicated to everybody and agreed upon by everybody is very hard. Very hard. Now, I understood it by the time I did Outer Worlds, and so I was much better equipped to talk to designers and programmers and artists about what we were trying to do.
Fire in the hole!
Got here.
Related to that, something that you learn after you have many games under your belt, some of which did well and some of which didn't. There's an old, I believe it's Roman, it's like thousands of years old. There's an expression that I did not learn until years later called success has
Here.
many fathers, but failure is an orphan. And what this means is when you make a game that does well, everybody
Careful now.
Enemy down.
woodwork that you don't even know, that you've never seen before.
One enemy remaining. Spike down
my.
A.
The second ad together after the game shipped.
Last
text,
player standing.
You know, buy mutants or something like that. And you're like... Everybody wants a piece of something that they think is going to become a great thing. And that makes sense. The flip side, though, if you
Spike
make a game
planted.
that isn't good, people just walk away. People who would bang down your door, yelling at you for not saying their name in an interview, don't care what you say about the bad game. In fact, they'd prefer you not to mention them, even if they had more work in the bad game. So that's why I often tell people that Temple is my bottom. It's the lowest Metacritic score of any game I've done.
Behind you.
But I liked it.
4.
I liked that game. I love D&D. I love tabletop D&D. It's a really good representation of tabletop D&D. My writing is not good, and that drags it down, and I get it. And had it shipped with bugs. Almost all my games have.
Okay,
Outer Worlds
we know the
didn't.
drill. Stick to your roles and we'll crush it.
So that's where I learned when you make a good game, everybody will be coming at you. And why aren't you why aren't you mentioning me? Why aren't you mentioning me? By the way, sometimes I flip this on people and go, I've never heard you once mention me. I've never heard you once give a compliment about anything I did. In fact, I backed somebody in the corner once and said, name one thing I contributed to this game that I was just incorrect on. And you couldn't do it. So you gotta balance this. Yes, everybody, it makes sense.
Careful
Everybody
now.
wants to be a part of the game, and they want to shy away from what they think are the problem games. But let me remind you, the theme of this video, I've learned more about how to make good games from my bad ones. Which leads me into the next thing I want to talk about, which is taste. Taste is subjective. It is. For most of you hearing this, you're like, oh yeah.
Going up.
No, I think but even those of you who think it's subjective, you often don't act like it is. I talk about this when I get feedback on my games and they say, well, this is dumb. Not only that,
No charges
One
left.
enemy remaining. Spike down B.
somebody said, I don't like
Don't stress.
okay. lots of people do.
Last round
And
before
I
the
mentioned once
switch.
it's like walking to an
Use
ice cream
everything you
parlor,
have.
a
We
famous
lose
one
it
that
anyway.
offers, 31 flavors or something, and saying, well, these are the only three
Need
good
equipment.
ones. Well, obviously, you're wrong.
Thanks.
Or they wouldn't have the other 28. It's just the mind-numbingly large
I have extra money
ego
if anyone
it
needs.
takes for people to try to prove that their taste
Got
is
here.
objective
Hitting when they're not
Just-
looking.
explodes my tiny brain. Especially if it's something where they're arguing about something which is a real thing you can point at, but some people just don't care about. An example I gave in a previous video is you can be playing a game that crashes, but other than that, it's a really good game.
I'll
It's got
handle
super
this.
cool mechanics, it looks cool, you're having so much fun playing it, but then someone will go, it's a bad game. It's an objectively bad game. It crashes a lot. And I've seen people go, I just save my game a lot. Doesn't bother me. When it crashes, I just reload and keep going. It's a super fun
Spike
game.
planted.
And they're like, no, it is objectively bad. Crashes, measured, code, bad. I think they missed the entire point of what good and bad even is, and that it is very subjective.
Last player
I even
standing.
there can be comments. You're right, you're wrong. Taste is objective. Crashing is objectively bad. Completely missing the point. Crashing is bad. That doesn't mean the game is bad or everything.
Switching sides.
Don't know any other way to say that. Related
Let's
to
get
that,
these idiots.
I quickly learned from failure that you're only as good as your last game. So, going into Arcanum, we were on that high of Fallout. And then after Arcanum,
Here.
when we had publishers come, they're like, well, you know, we're not really sure Arcanum was doing that well. So we kind of,
Going
we
C.
did 2 immediate contracts, and we weren't exactly negotiating from a position of strength. After Temple went out, whoa, you know, it got some bad reviews, and I just slumped in to Vampire and even told the other 2 co-owners, Leonard and Jason, look, I'm just gonna do code
Together.
and handle HR stuff. Because I didn't want to touch
Hey.
design for a while.
Smoke's down.
And
Watching here.
that's happened throughout my career, that I used to just think it was really idiotic LinkedIn recruiters that contacted me through LinkedIn that literally only looked at my last game and would go, oh, I have a
Spike
great
down,
programming
C.
job for you. I have a great design job for you. So I do both, and I've done both for decades. Nope, they only look at the people often do that, just in general. So I'm only as good as whatever my last game was that I did. So if my last game was good in their mind, see previous point about subjective, I must be on the or just a billion things. Which actually gets me into my next point, which is the right people on the team can make all the difference.
Opponent killed.
You know, I've worked with
One enemy remaining.
of
Last
ability
player
and
standing.
passion and buy-in on the team vision of different groups that are in the team. And you can kind of see it reflected in the end state of the game. When people really care,
I'm
like, oh
amped.
my god,
Let's go.
they
I got
they
things
like,
to
took
do.
ownership of some part of the game. You can tell because that part of the game just feels really cool and really cared for in a way that's hard to put your finger on, but you're just like, I love this. Whether it's dialogue, level,
Where to?
layout,
Come B.
lighting,
Alright, I'll go.
how characters walk and animate. It's everybody has a different
Forward.
thing that they like,
Big
and
D
that's
energy.
reflected in the game. And because I make games with different teams,
Fully smoked.
many of the games I make are very interesting. I said, well, I really like the mechanics in this one, but not a later one. I really like the
Can't use
animations
that.
in this one, but not the later one. How do they go backwards?
Stay down.
I'm like, it didn't. It's just done made by different people
Careful now.
who cared about it. Again, because taste is subjective.
Reloading.
They liked how that was. People thought,
Reloading.
No charges left.
which goes me to my next point, which is related to the previous one, is this took me a long time to learn, and
Plant.
I first noticed it at dinner play.
Enemy spotted me.
And it got reinforced every game company after that. I did not know this at my first company, Pegasus.
One enemy remaining. Last player standing.
Charges left. My
Literally
ultimate's
knows
ready.
What you do, how you act,
Alright, good job, guys.
I can't see your guy.
how good your work is.
Move
Some
in
people are
after
going
I
to like you,
strike.
and some
That's
people
when they're
won't.
weak.
Often this has less to do with you than it does with them. Either there's some character or personality
Where we
trait you
going?
have that they just hate, and everybody who has that, or something you did set them off and they can never see past that point. See my video on nuance and how you view people.
You know what to do.
It's hard to tell why people do the things they do, which is why I try to avoid
To the
Fully
thing.
smoked.
why anyone does anything they do. But I have learned that there are some people I'm never going to win over,
Come on, let's go!
and other people are going to love me no matter what I do. And points of view with a lot of people in the middle. I just have to accept that.
Reloading.
You're not going to win some people over, and some people you're not going to. Which brings me to my last point of what failure is. And learn this lesson until Leonard Boraski crystallized it by telling me this phrase. He said, "Hey Tim,
Block in sight.
everyone is the hero in their own
For you.
stories." Once he told me that, I
Reloading.
looked back at how people talked about events I did.
Barrier created.
And yeah, I know that. And I thought that's what was happening. They're like, well,
One enemy remaining.
contributions seem important. But then I realized that just when people talk about themselves, they're always the good guy. They're always the one who tried to do
Match
the right
point.
thing. They never flew off the handle. They never said a bad thing. They never intentionally tried to hurt anyone. Yet those things happen. And when Leonard told me that, I thought,
Here.
yeah, everybody does that. I do that. When something happens, I don't try to think of myself as being the bad guy, even though when I tell you about some of the arguments that we got into at
Safety's off.
in a later video, I know I do that a lot. Sorry. I just can't talk about everything in one video.
Fully smoked.
Every time I look back on it, I'm like, I'm not proud of that. I think I might have been on the wrong side of that, or at the very minimum, I just didn't need to care about what we were arguing about as much as I did. I should have just let it.
Beacon here.
What? Honestly, I don't really care. Let's just do it equally. I don't care. It's not the part of the game I'm throwing you. There's never been a game I've
Going up.
Just my passion. So I try to
Careful
combat
now.
that tendency. Now that I'm aware of it, and I know that everybody wants to tell a story and make themselves I try to combat that in some way. First of all, I've got all my notes. I'm taking notes since interval. I don't have much notes on Nemesis. Most
your
notes
eyes.
in graduate school that you compare.
One enemy remaining.
Ever since Interplay, I've been taking a lot of notes. I use those notes to try to ground you.
Attackers win.
When I do look up things in my notes, I try to ignore if I
Your
wrote
duty is
down
not over.
the why someone did something. I just care about the what. So when I report events, and when I talk about things here, especially if I talk about someone else, I say what they did. I don't try to say why they did it. I don't try to guess their mental state or what previous events led them to do that. I just say, this person did this. That's kind of the pros and cons of that. Is the pro is you can't argue that they didn't do it. The con is I do avoid trying to dive into anything that makes make it more personable for them, because I feel like I can't. Now that I understand this bias going on, I don't want to make them into a villain. Similarly, I'm not prepared to make them into a hero, so I just try to say this person did it. Similarly, I try to take blame for the things that I did wrong. And I've done that in multiple videos where I said, I did this wrong. And I notice and get suspect when I'm talking to someone who never seems to have done anything wrong. They have this blameless career. Like, they worked on a game, but all the bad stuff about that game, that wasn't them. So that's something I listen to that now. Especially when people do interviews. I'm like, did this person ever do anything bad? They're always they always made the right decision. They always pulled things out. It's amazing everything they do. And then the final thing I've been doing, and I've learned to do this, I didn't want this to turn into a chat channel, but I've noticed that when I bring people on, like I've had Leonard on twice, and I brought JT on last week, it kind of keeps things real and keeps things grounded and gives me that other perspective into the same event. Because, like I said, Leonard and I left a meeting once. And so the meeting had literally just happened. And we both had a different interpretation of what someone had meant when they said something. Like, I thought they were mad and throwing something out, and I was like, no, I don't think that. So having people on to talk about things, especially a long time ago, in Fallout was 28 years ago. well, and it started development almost 30 years ago. So having other people on here to talk about that is really important because I want that other perspective.